When we think about the British Raj in India, our minds usually go to big battles and famous viceroys. But what about the guy who actually drew up the blueprints for the whole system? Today we're going to look at Lord Cornwallis, not just as another governor, but as the chief architect of the administration that would run India for more than 100 years. We're going to see exactly how his design shaped the very foundations of British rule.
To really get a sense of his impact, you just need to know this one title he earned, Nagrik Seva Ka Janak, which means the father of the civil service in India. And trust me, this wasn't just some honorary nickname. Cornwallis didn't just tweak the system he found, he basically tore it down and re-engineered it from scratch, creating what became known as the steel frame of British administration. So, the big question is, how'd he do it?
So yeah, how did he pull this off? Well, when Cornwallis arrived in 1786, he took one look at the existing system and thought it was a total mess, inefficient and riddled with corruption. His solution wasn't to just patch things up. No, he decided to build something brand new. And he started by concentrating all the power.
His first move was also his most important one. Zile ke samast adhikar collector ke haathu mein. All authority in the district was to be consolidated into the hands of just one person, the collector. Now the collector wasn't just some tax guy anymore. He was suddenly the district's CEO, its top judge, and its chief magistrate, all rolled into one. This created a really clear pyramid of power, making the collector the absolute linchpin of the entire district administration.
Okay, so he had his command structure set up. What's next? Well, if you really want to control a territory, you have to control its justice and police systems. It's that simple. And Cornwallis's approach here was, you guessed it, just as radical as his other changes.
And the scale of this change was just massive. Before Cornwallis, you had Zilla Faujdari Adalatein. These were district criminal courts, often run by Indian judges who were part of the local community. What did he do? He got rid of them, completely. In their place, he created 4 mobile circuit courts, all staffed by Europeans, that would literally travel around the regions. Justice was no longer local, it was something that was brought to you by the new company structure.
He did the exact same thing with policing. First, he professionalized the force by increasing salaries. But then, he made a huge move. He stripped the local landlords, the zamindars, of all their traditional policing powers. This is classic Cornwallis. See an old power structure, dismantle it, and replace it with your own. By setting up a thana, or police station, in every single district, under a daraga that he appointed, he shifted power away from the local lords and directly to the state.
So he's got the administration, he's got the police, but how are you going to pay for this massive new infrastructure? For Cornwallis, the answer was crystal clear. You create an incredibly efficient and predictable system for pulling wealth right out of the land.
And this brings us to his most famous and probably most controversial economic reform, the Permanent Settlement of 1793. Now, the plan itself was designed by his expert, John Shore, and the idea seemed simple enough. You just fix the amount of revenue the company gets from the land, permanently. That way, the company gets a guaranteed income year after year, no surprises.
But just look at how the money was split. It's staggering, really. An incredible 90%, 90 of the land revenue collected went straight into the East India Company's pockets. The zamindar, the landlord who was now basically a glorified tax collector for the state, was left with just 10%.
But here's the real kicker. While the amount the zamindar had to pay the company was fixed forever, what he could charge the farmers was not. Zamindar blu rajaswakidar te karne ke liye swatantra the. They were totally free to set the revenue rate for the actual cultivators. This gave them immense power, and for the peasants on the ground, it often led to just crushing debt and hardship.
And while he was busy securing all this new income, Cornwallis also had to professionalize the people who would manage it. Corruption was rampant among company officials, so he enacted a simple but incredibly powerful rule. Company employees were banned from doing any private trade. Their job was to administer, not to get rich on the side.
In all of this, it brings us to the most complex part of his story. Because for all of its incredible efficiency, the magnificent structure that Cornwallis built had a deeply, deeply problematic foundation. This is his controversial legacy.
In 1793, he introduced something called the Cornwallis Code. At its very heart was the principle of the separation of powers, keeping the courts separate from the government. This was a remarkably modern and enlightened concept, a real cornerstone of Western legal thinking. But in that exact same system, this rule was just as absolute. भारतीयों के लिए सूबेदार से ऊंचा पद नहीं. For Indians, there was to be no post higher than a subedar, a junior officer rank in the army. So the very same architect who built this modern system also built a rigid racial glass ceiling right into its foundations.
And this is what that glass ceiling looked like in real life. It was a pretty clear pyramid of power. In the army, sure, Indians could be the soldiers, but leadership was capped at junior ranks like Subedar or Jemadar. And in that brand new, prestigious administrative service he created, well, the highest they could hope to be were junior judges or revenue officials. All the real decision-making power, the ability to actually shape policy, was reserved exclusively for the British. Period.
And what's wild is just how fast he did all this. He shows up in 1786, and by 1793, both the Permanent Settlement and the Cornwallis Code are already in place. In just 7 short years, he had completely reshaped the governance of British India.
So we're left with this huge paradox, right? An efficient, modern administrative structure built on top of deep institutional discrimination. Is that the true, permanent legacy of the architect of British India? What does it tell us about the very nature of the structures he built? That's the core question his legacy really leaves us wrestling with.